So the first thing I want to say is after every single speaker today, I've sort of said to myself, man, I'm pretty stoked that I don't have to speak after them. And so, Joel, I was really rooting against you, but you screwed me. Yeah, thanks, buddy. So I want to talk just really briefly about the parent trigger. What it is and how it's being implemented in Los Angeles and how hopefully it's going to be implemented in Louisiana. The parent trigger is a really simple law. It's simple but revolutionary, I think, in its simplicity. It says that if half the parents who are trapped in a systemically failing school sign a petition, then they get to trigger radical change. And they get to pick what kind of change they want for their children in their community. This law passed in 2009 by one vote in both houses of the California legislature, both dominated by Democrats, as a direct result of President Obama's Race to the Top initiative. I think it's worth acknowledging how brilliant that initiative was and the change that it has led to, even in states that lost, like California. The rationale behind the parent trigger is that the system itself is very difficult to change from the inside. I have been lucky to work in a number of different positions where I had theoretically some power to do something about the system. I've worked in the Clinton White House. I was a deputy mayor in Los Angeles. And up until about a year ago when I was on the California State Board of Education. I got fired on the new governor's first day in office and replaced by the chief lobbyist for the teachers union in California. Easy come, easy go. But the idea behind the parent trigger is that when you're in a room, a closed door room, and there are no reporters in the room, there's no parents in the room, and you're just talking about power politics, subject of kids just doesn't come up all that often. And it's not because people are mean or people are evil or people are conspiring to make things the way they are. Like the other speakers up here have said, it's because of the system. It's broken, and it is not incentivized to serve the interests of children. It's incentivized to serve the interests of grown-ups. And the only way we're going to systemically change things is to effectuate a raw and unapologetic transfer of political power from the defenders of the status quo to parents, because parents have a wholly different sense of urgency and wholly different incentive structures than everybody else. So that's what the parent trigger is. It's not just a new law. We think of it as a new paradigm, an entirely new way of thinking about public education and education reform. It's not about charter schools or district schools or education reformers or unions. It's not about Democrats or Republicans. It's simply about giving parents power over the educational destiny of their own children. We recently announced the next parent trigger school that I want to talk with you about, but a reporter asked me a question the day we made that announcement. I think brings this all into stark relief. And he said to me, the school where the parents had organized, it had gone up a few points the year before, and he said, hey, isn't this kind of unfair? Shouldn't you give this school a chance to succeed? And, I think that it's pretty easy to get lost in bureaucratic metrics like that. The fundamental question, the only question that any of us should be asking about failing schools is, would you send your own children there? If I won't send my two daughters, Fiona and Eloise, to Desert Trails Elementary, it's at the very best elitist and at worst racist for me to expect other parents to send their kids there. So that's what this movement is all about. I want to tell you a little bit about the first school that is going to use the parent trigger in America. It's a school called Desert Trails Elementary. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's in the Mojave Desert, about 100 miles east of Los Angeles. These parents came to us, to our organization, Parent Revolution, about 9 months ago. And they said they want to do a parent trigger campaign. They're trapped in a systemically failing school, worst school in the district, bottom 10% of the schools in the state. They want to do a parent trigger campaign right now. We said, slow down. Let's talk about what this means, because for parents, with this historic new power comes profound new responsibility to educate ourselves about what is best for our kids and how best to use this power. So we help them to form what's called a parent union chapter at Desert Trails. With elected leadership, with membership requirements, they incorporate with the Secretary of State, and they sign an MOU with us that commits them to a Kids First agenda. And in exchange, we commit to training them. And we trained them. We trained them on community organizing, and we trained them in public policy. We've developed a 5-week curriculum where now if you talk to any one of these parents at Desert Trails Elementary, they sound like they've gone to the Kennedy School of Government. They understand this, and they understand it in a non-theoretical or esoteric way. They understand how this power affects them, how it affects their children. So they spent the summer organizing. They spent the summer knocking on doors in their community, not to get petitions signed, but just to hear from parents about what they wanted for their kids. Then they spent the fall going through these classes, being trained on community organizing, being trained on public policy. And they came to some very sophisticated decisions about what they wanted for their kids. These parents don't particularly want an outside charter school operator to come in and serve their kids. They want in-district reform, but kids first in-district reform. So the solution they came up with is they want to be able to hire and fire their own principal. They want that principal to be able to manage the staff, manage the budget, and manage the curricula. It sounds pretty common sense, but as most of the people in this room understand, that's pretty radical. And so they collected by themselves over signatures representing over 70% of the parents at their school, and they are right now bargaining with the school district. They are sitting down with the school district and saying, look, we have the power to turn our school into a charter school. Even if they end up going charter, they're going to run their own charter school. The parents are going to form the majority of the board on their charter school. But they don't want to have to do that. So they're telling the district, they're sitting down in one of those closed-door rooms. But the difference here, the difference for the first time in history, is that the parents are at the table, and they have power. In any other context, if parents sit down with the district superintendent and the president of their teachers union, and they said, we want these radical reforms and we want them now, they would tell the parents to go do a bake sale. But not this time, because these parents are saying, if you don't do this, we're going to fire you. And we have the power to do that. We don't want to have to, but our kids get older every single day, and we can't afford to wait. And so right now, they're negotiating. They have another meeting on Wednesday. The parents have given the district their proposal, which is pretty simple. Everything in their proposal, they wrote out a proposal about what kind of union contract they want for their children. Everything in their proposal they took from existing union contracts in other districts throughout the state. The parents understand you can have wall-to-wall kids first reform coexisting in a wall-to-wall unionized environment, and we'll see. We hope the teachers union will agree. If they don't, the parents are going to go charter. But either way, these parents are going to get a great school for their kids, and they're going to lead the way for other parents across California and other parents across America who are watching them and learning. And so this is a pretty cool moment, a historic moment, even I think a revolutionary moment. And, we spend a lot of time at our organization looking at, what's going on in the world around us, from the Occupy movement to the revolutions in the Middle East. There's a lot going on. A lot is changing. And as it relates to education reform broadly and parent trigger in particular, I think there are two important takeaways. One is that the defenders of the status quo don't give up power easily, and we've seen that in California. The day that we passed the parent trigger, the head of the teachers union in California called the parent trigger the lynch mob provision, even though almost all of the parents organizing around parent trigger are African American and Latino. In Compton last year, when parents organized around the parent trigger, many of the parents were undocumented, and Compton Unified used their immigration status to bully them into rescinding their signatures. And just last summer, we saw that the National American Federation of Teachers released accidentally, you can't make this stuff up, accidentally put on their website their secret plan to kill the parent trigger. I mean, we saw that and we're like, is this like a sitcom or was this reality? I mean, we couldn't believe it. And their plan was, plan A is overwhelm parents with lobbyists. Just get parents out of the room, get lobbyists in the room, and cut deals. The second, plan B was, if that doesn't work, trick parents into thinking they have power when they actually don't. Create committees and give them fancy names like governance committees, but make sure they're only advisory. We have parents threatened and harassed and intimidated all the time, but these parents aren't backing down, again, because it's about their kids. The other thing, though, that I think is exciting about the moment in time that we're living in is that change is possible in a way that I think it hasn't been for generations. And if you look at the history of other social movements, and this is a social movement, you recognize that these windows in time open and close more quickly than any of us can predict. And so that means that everybody in this room, all of us, have a responsibility to seize this moment, to not wait, because tomorrow things might change. And so it's a real honor to be here. I'm looking forward to the panel, and thank you for letting us participate.
Thanks, Ben. Our next panelist, Scott Shirley, founder of KIPP Delta Schools in Southeast Arkansas.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be back in Baton Rouge. I actually was a Teach for America Corps member back in 1998, and I taught here in Baton Rouge for 3 years, where I really miss the food. It also brings back sort of humble beginnings, because I remember the first day of class, the first thing you do as a brand new teacher is take roll, and I remember calling out students' names. Michael, Roger, it's Roger. Herbert, it's a bear. So I'm always humbled when I come back to the state that there's a lot that I did not know. I actually wanted to open a KIPP school in Baton Rouge. In the political sort of structure at the time forced us, or encouraged us, I should say, to go to Arkansas, where they were asking us to bring KIPP, which stands for Knowledge is Power program. So just being 24 years old, I said, okay, I'll go wherever. Moved to Arkansas and went to a small town called Helena. Let me just give you a little context. Helena is the 12th poorest county in the United States. It's actually recently consolidated, so the mighty combined population of Helena, West Helena, is 15,000, and it's right there on the Mississippi River in the heart of the Delta. So if there were ever a place for a charter school to fail, that would have been it. And I didn't know any of this when I went there. I was like, okay, I'll go start a school. That sounds good. The thing that, growing up in Massachusetts and going to school in Maine, the thing that startled me when I got to Helena were the questions that people asked me. And they said, can these children really learn? And we all know these is code for African American or poor. Can these children really learn? And I thought, are people really asking me this in 2001? The most disappointing thing was we had found an old train depot that we were going to convert into a school and open with 3 classrooms. And a former mayor came up to me and said, well, I'm opposed to the idea because the city invested a lot of money into the bushes and shrubbery, and I don't want those to be destroyed. Because that's what little black children do. They rip up shrubbery at recess. And the fact that she had the audacity to ask me that question let me know that I was not only in a different place, but perhaps in a different time. So we went door to door. We went into the toughest neighborhoods with people yelling at me, don't go there, you'll get shot. And what I found, similar to what Ben spoke about and all the other speakers, is that there were some incredible, amazing parents who wanted radical change, and we did our best to offer it. The next decade, we've grown from, we started with a small group of 5th graders and grew out to 4 schools. Today, we serve 860 students across the Mississippi Delta and have a plan to grow to 12 schools. What I want to talk a little bit about, though, is the results that children achieved when no one expected them to achieve. And we had to kill and destroy those questions that people were asking in the state. Maine First, as a founding class, started from 5th graders and they became 11th graders. They had the 2nd highest proficiency rating in the state of Arkansas on the end of course literacy exam. We were second only to the Arkansas School for Math, Science, and the Arts, which is a selective program, and proving that kids from the Delta can achieve. The average ACT of that founding class was a 22.7, when the average ACT for an African American in the state of Arkansas was a 16.7. These things are tragic and they have to change and they have to be disproved. The other one that I'm proud of is the AP results. We looked in 2008, over 2,500 AP exams were passed across the state of Arkansas. Only 113 of those were passed by African American students. In a state which has 22% of its population be represented as African American, there are only 3% who actually pass an AP exam. That is disproportionate and problematic. We're proud to say that of our founding class, we had over 40% pass the AP exams. And I want to emphasize, not take, but pass. And so now the game has changed a little bit, because no longer can people look at families and students and say, can they really learn? And that's the question that was asked when I first got there. Nobody can look and say, well, gee, kids from low-income communities, students without parental support, students particularly of color, they are destined to failure. Well, the problem is we've disproved that. Nobody can say, can these students learn? They have to ask different questions. The questions they have to ask is, why aren't other schools achieving the same results? What have you done differently? Why can't all of our schools be like this? Why can't there be more opportunity like this for our children? And it's interesting, and it's taken 10 years to do it, but last Thursday I testified in Jackson, Mississippi in front of the Joint Committee, the Education Committee in front of the Senate and House, and they're looking at charter law, which will provide the same opportunities. And it's tragic because students right across the Mississippi River have been denied the same opportunity for 10 years while our students have been thriving. I close with this. I think there are, again, 2 impacts that we've had, and I'd like to tell the quick story of Richard Harris, who came in at the 17th percentile in both math and reading. He stuck with us for 8 years, and 8 years later, he had a $50,000 scholarship per year to Vanderbilt University. The thing that brings chills to me, though, is he's a sophomore now. He got sick. He struggled a little bit, and his parents said, come on home, come closer to home. And he fought his parents. His parents said, just go to the local community college. It's okay, you'll be close to home. He fought because he has a younger sister at our school who is now a senior. And he said, if I give in now, my sister will never have the same opportunity. The second thing that I think is, again, changing, that we've changed the questions that need to be asked. It's no longer can they learn. It's the fact that people can no longer accept as an excuse that socioeconomic and race are destined to fail. So I look forward to the questions as well, and it's great to be in Baton Rouge.
So my dad taught me a few things about public speaking. First on his list, never follow two governors and Joel Klein. And I think you all have a sense of how honored and privileged I have been over the last decade to work so closely with the gentleman seated to my right. This guy is a hero. He is the founder of the education reform movement. And Joel, it's a great honor to have you here in Baton Rouge. As for the guy at the end of the row there, I shared earlier a story. I was over at City Hall recently and was greeted by one of the deputy mayors there, discussing a strategy that we were contemplating. Sat down at the table, and she greeted me with the following: "Hello, John. How are you?" And that's totally fine with me. I am totally fine to be confused with this guy seated to my right, John White. As those of you who have gotten to know him already know, has not fallen far from the Joel Klein tree, is a true advocate, is a great friend, and is off to a great start here in Louisiana, and we're fortunate to have him here. So let me just share a few quick reflections. I'm going to be very brief so we can get to questions. Joel talked about my experience starting a school in the Bronx. The story kind of goes like this. We were approved to start the school around February of 2004, and a few months later were assigned to open this school on the Evander Childs campus in the Bronx. Evander Childs at the time was a school of about 3,000 students. One of the largest high schools in the greatest city in the world, or the second greatest city in the world, I guess. So I walked in one day with the beginning of my staff to begin our work, to move into our rooms up on the 4th floor. It happened to be graduation day for Evander Childs High School. And a few of us stood in the back of the auditorium and counted heads. And we counted 241 students graduating from an initial cohort of 1,300 students. So in 2004, the largest high school in New York City was graduating roughly 19% of its students. You fast forward today, you've got 6 schools on the Evander campus, one of which is the Bronx Lab School. I'm proud to have spent 6 years there. And together, those schools are graduating over 4 times what Evander was doing. A graduation rate north of 80% for those schools. It's the same students, same families, cousins, next-door neighbors, students from the same tough circumstances who are getting what they deserve in New York City, in large part because of Joel's leadership, because of John's leadership, because of the faith they had and we continue to have in our school leaders and educators to take a broken system and make it right. When Joel started, 45% of students graduated. Today, 65% of students graduated. When Joel started, 16,000 graduates of New York City high schools matriculated to the City University of New York. Today, 24,000. 24,000, a 50% increase in less than a decade. 24,000 students are matriculating from New York City high schools to CUNY. Joel talked about the new school strategy, which is the tip of the spear of the reform in New York. Just 2 weeks ago, I welcomed 50 new school leaders who had been approved through our process, about 2/3 of them non-charter, roughly 20 of them charter, to start new schools. Those 50 leaders are opening schools that when they are at maturity, when they are at full maturity, serving every grade level they are authorized to serve, will serve 30,000 students. And we have done that year after year in New York City since Joel got us started. Joel cited a double-blind study by MDRC that proves the remarkable lift this has given families across the city. And I guess what I want to comment briefly on, then I'll have a seat, is that you would think we would be celebrated for this. You would think that this would be paraded around the city and around the country as the next best thing by everybody. But I want to encourage you all to watch the news over the next few weeks. Next Thursday night, we will vote in New York City to phase out the next round of low-performing schools. And if you watch carefully, you'll see that the UFT, the union and the teachers union in New York City, is going to show up in force that night. They're going to bring 1,000 people out to say that we're doing everything wrong, when in fact we're doing everything right, doing a lot of things right, and we're doing it with their members largely, and we're doing it with the same students who have failed before. We have, with Joel's leadership and over the last few years, we have pursued this strategy because we think and know and believe that every child deserves a quality school. Every child deserves a quality teacher. These principles animate our work. They animate the work of the reform movement, and they are driven by one simple fact. They are enabled by a very simple dynamic in New York City and around the country, where you have leadership that is prepared to take charge of this issue, no matter how daunting. And we have it here. We have it in Joel. We have it in Mary. We have it in John. We have it in Governors Bush and Governor Jindal. And we certainly have it in Mayor Bloomberg, where we have elected officials who are prepared to take accountability to solve a problem. To solve a problem that ultimately cannot be solved in a decade, and will bring people out to throw tomatoes, but solve it or take it on because they know it is right. Then we make progress, and I think that is no doubt what has happened in New York City. It's happened in the Delta. It's happening right now. It's happening in Los Angeles. It will certainly continue to happen here in Louisiana with John's leadership, and hopefully right here in Baton Rouge as well. So I look forward to your questions.